Hello and a very warm welcome to Policy Watch, our weekly program that keeps you abreast of all the major macroeconomic developments in the week just gone by. This time we've zeroed in on three stories that took center stage during the week. The first was on the Bali round of the Doha Ministerial, the second on the face-off in the sugar industry between farmers, millers and the government, and the third on the emergence of the Chinese Yuan as the second most used currency in international trade transactions. And joining me to discuss these stories is Harvir Singh, Senior Editor with Amar Ujala. Welcome to the show, Harvir. Speaking at the Bali Ministerial of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, the Commerce and Industry Minister Anand Sharma termed food security as non-negotiable for India. The due restraint provision in its current form, said the minister, cannot be accepted as it has several shortcomings. It is only temporary with no assurance of a permanent solution and moreover does not provide protection from challenge under the agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. It must remain in force until we reach a negotiated permanent solution and provide adequate protection from all kinds of challenges. Since the developed world is not willing to change its stand on this, what does this mean? Does it spell the end of the Doha round, or is it another of the many roadblocks that we witnessed in the past? We'll get Harvir's view on this, but before that, let's hear this bureau report.
India's Trade Minister Anand Sharma appeared victorious after a 30-hour-long marathon session over the last 2 days of WTO Ministerial Conference at Bali in Indonesia. India and other developing countries succeeded in their demands to run their food security programs without running foul to global trade agreement that is expected to boost global trade by $1 trillion. As a part of the peace clause, India and other developing nations have 4 years' time to find a permanent mechanism for public stock holding for their food security programs. Commerce Minister Anand Sharma hailed the agreement after an informal meeting of 159 member nations with WTO Chief Robert Azevedo.
Well, this is a historic day because the voice of the poor and the developing countries has been heard with respect. India had persisted throughout the negotiations that the right of countries to public stock holding for food security must be recognized.
The decision covers all existing and future food security programs of developing nations. A new formula for calculating subsidies will be worked out to ensure that subsidies to India's agriculture sector do not cross 10% cap prescribed under WTO regime. Developing nations also agreed to inform WTO's Committee on Agriculture if they are in danger of crossing 10% cap on agriculture subsidies and monitoring by the WTO. Market distorting subsidies are prohibited under the agreement. A number of India's proposals regarding farm exports to developed countries, air courier services and custom clearances have also been accepted. The deal also calls for the Trade Facilitation Pact to be put in place over the next 2 years. The pact will put in binding rules to ensure easier movement of goods, but arriving at such a consensus was not easy and the ministerial conference had to be extended until early Saturday morning. Nearly 25 countries including Egypt, Brazil and Venezuela had supported India's concerns on food security. The Bali package will now be endorsed by the Union Cabinet and placed before Parliament. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Harvir, how catastrophic would a failure of the Doha round be? Because after all, the Bali Ministerial is one of many ministerials, the 9th ministerial, and we've really seen that the Doha round hasn't made much progress. And India is always termed as a spoiler. Are we once again going to be termed the spoiler? Of course, we've not seen the final communique as yet, but the general impression is that India is always saying no, no, no. So I have two questions for you. One, how catastrophic would it be if the Doha, this round or the ministerial or the Doha round were not to end in any progress, number one? And number two, how warranted is our position that no, the peace clause is not enough, 4 years is not enough, we want a permanent solution? Are we being a little unrealistic?
Actually, if you see since last many years, and as you already said that WTO is not able to conclude this Doha round, almost more than a decade has gone for that, and I think this WTO arrangement is losing its importance in the global trade. That's why if you see many blocks are emerging, even ASEAN is there, but now North Atlantic Treaty is there, Pacific Treaty is also coming there. So again, it is forcing the countries to go in small blocks and to trade liberally and to get mutually benefit out of that. And it's very unfortunate that 159 countries are member of the WTO and they are not able to resolve their issues. And in my opinion, it is more and more rigid attitude of the developed countries. They want your market, they need trade facilitation from developing countries because they see huge potential for their agricultural products to export to these countries, but they are not able to accommodate the concern of the developing countries. And everybody is aware that these developed countries took the benefit of 9-year benefit from peace clause and adjusted their agricultural subsidies through different boxes, whether it is green
Red,
boxes
amber,
or brown boxes, whatever is that. And after doing their homework properly, now they are forcing this agreement on agriculture with the very strict clause on developing countries.
So you feel the peace clause, India should not agree to the peace clause?
I think India should not agree because we cannot afford, any sovereign country cannot lose its food security as well as livelihood security.
No, but I have two concerns over here. Number one, it's in India's interest. After all, we are a relatively small country in terms of economic power, also in terms of our share in global trade. So for us, the multilateral route is far better than the bilateral route. So rather than kind of being termed a spoiler and getting everybody upset with India, we should be trying to push these multilateral fora, number one. Number two, the Bali round is also talking about trade facilitation. And trade facilitation is as much in our interest as in the Western countries. Yes, the Western countries might benefit a little bit more, but in global negotiations, it is always the case that somebody must benefit a little bit more. So if we are going to gain something in trade facilitation, is it so much of a giveaway for us to kind of concede on the peace clause? Because after all, agricultural subsidies are trade distorting and also distorting in terms of resource allocation. So should we not do away with agricultural subsidies, not so much because the Western world is pressurizing us, but because it's good for our own agriculture?
Actually, that liberalizing the trade is really good for our own agriculture, but we are not doing that. We have not done our sufficient homework before going to the negotiating table, and we have lost 1 decade. Because when other countries were doing all these things, they were moving their agricultural subsidies to different boxes and under different names, we were not able to do that. We only seize our political agenda. And right now the political agenda is to implement this food security bill. And even in my opinion, this food security bill is not a direct subsidy to the farmer, but at the same time, it will distort the grain trade within the country, and it will encourage more and more corrupt fellows to make money out of that. So it is really not in a good thing for the country, but at the same time, we should also look that trade facilitation is really good for developing economies, and as experts said that it will give an opportunity of $60 billion trade per annum, and majority of the benefit will go to developing countries or least developing countries, least developed countries. So really it is beneficial. The conclusion of this round is important and crucial for the benefit on the front of trade for us also. I think we are really lazy and too late to do the things, because we don't have a regular system and a continuous working on the WTO things and on subsidies. As you said that actually it is very ad hocism system we are using even in subsidies. We talks about fertilizer sectors reforms, we talks about agriculture trade reforms, but we are not moving even an inch on that side. That's why these kind of problems are coming. Why should a farmer sell his or her produce at a low price than the production cost? Because our system is like that, and our rules, regulations and laws force him to do that, because he doesn't have an independent market even within the country, even a few miles away from his field. That is the problem. First we should resolve our internal issues, and there was enough time in the last 1 decade. We should have done a lot on that front. Otherwise we have to face this kind of problem now, because on some products, particularly in case of rice, our subsidy level has almost reached to that 10% of this de minimis under the de minimis clause, because we have not done the things properly on that front. So if even this 4-year clause is there, so maybe after some time the prices will go up. And some experts are also mentioning that this is rupee depreciation, which has put this 10% thing lower on in case of rice, and maybe some independent produce in case of independent products. This limit of 10% subsidy of the total value of the product will close in the near future.
But Harvir, you just said that India should not agree to the peace clause, but what you are arguing just now, you are saying there is a case for us to use this to kind of reform our agriculture, precisely because there is this cap on agriculture subsidy. Here is an opportunity for us to agree to the peace clause, maybe in the WTO talks, get the benefit of trade facilitation, and then use this to say that yes, we have to push through agricultural reform, because after all, politically it becomes very difficult for the government to do away with the subsidies. So if you say that yes, we've got this benefit of trade facilitation, and in return we have to do something about removing the subsidies. So shouldn't this 4-year peace clause be a good reason for the government to push through an agenda which is otherwise politically quite contentious?
No, actually, by going the experience of the past in our country on the particularly on policy reforms and all, it will be a very I think disturbing thing for the farmers of the country, because the way our bureaucracy and politician works, they will not make a big change in the next 4 years.
Okay.
So who will be the sufferer? Sufferer will be the farmer.
Okay.
So how can we go? And majority of the farmers will not favor this kind of condition, because you are not liberalizing him. And since 91, each and every sector, whether it is financial sector or manufacturing sector
basically you're saying
or service sector.
You're saying the farmer will suffer if we agree.
Yes,
but on that
farmer
note, I will
will
have
suffer.
to interrupt you because we slip into a very short break. But please be with us. We'll be back very, very soon. Welcome back. The impasse in Uttar Pradesh sugar economy has reportedly been broken, with some concessions by all parties concerned: the government, the mills and the farmers. The state would forgo some levies, the mills would accept a steep cane price increase, but will have to pay it only in installments, and the cane growers have to settle for a price lower than their demand. That might have come as good news, but UP is not the only one state where the industry is facing an impasse. All major cane growing states are facing similar problems to a greater or a lesser extent. This fits the pattern of the sugar industry lurching from crisis to respite to crisis once again. Is there a way out of this cycle? Is complete deregulation the only answer? We'll ask Harvir for his views, but first let's hear this bureau report.
There is a good news for the sugar industry this week, as the centre has approved a bailout package for the industry. The package includes an interest-free loan of Rs 7,200 crore to sugar mills to pay dues of sugarcane growers, as the dues to sugarcane farmers has already crossed the figure of 3,400 crore rupees. Centre formed a ministers' panel under the leadership of Agriculture Minister Sharad Pawar to address the liquidity crunch faced by sugar industry that has resulted in farmers' protests and hectic negotiations among stakeholders in state of Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra. The ministerial panel, that includes Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, Food Minister K.V. Thomas, Aviation Minister and Rashtriya Lok Dal Chief Ajit Singh, recommended recasting of loans taken by sugar mills as per Reserve Bank norms.
7,200 crores will be the loan provided by financial institution banks to the industry, which will be used exclusively for payment of sugarcane, and the interest portion of 12% will be borne by Government of India and from Sugar Development Fund.
The ministerial panel also suggested doubling of ethanol blending in petrol from current 5% to 10%. It also recommended incentives to produce 4 million tons of sugar and setting up of a buffer stock. These measures are aimed at easing the problems faced by sugar mills that have seen steep rise in sugarcane prices set by state governments and possibility of suppressed sugar prices due to surplus production in recent years. The country has a carry-forward stock of 8.8 million tons of sugar from earlier production, that is 38% of the total requirement of sugar in the country. The problem was aggravated as millers' export prospects were very bleak. Other producers like Brazil and Thailand also have surplus production, coupled with weak currencies that make it difficult for global market to absorb India's surplus production. However, the centre's decision to provide interest-free loan to sugar millers to clear dues to sugarcane growers has come as a big relief to the industry and sugar-producing states. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Harvir, we were just talking about WTO and the distortions in agriculture and why it becomes so difficult for India to accept that peace clause. The sugar industry, I think, epitomizes all that is wrong with the agricultural sector in India. What do you see as a way out? Why is the sugar industry alone so still, wrapped up in all kinds of controls? We've seen delicensing, but we're nowhere near deregulation. What really is the way out? Is it entirely a political problem or is it an economic problem?
You see, sugar is one of the oldest industry in our country. And I think particularly in rural area is the only industry which is providing jobs, providing earning opportunities even to farmers, a regular income, and for a cash crop. It is the only industry. But I think sugar is too much have politics in it, and particularly our politicians are so much involved in sugar politics and the cane
the
politics.
Agriculture Minister himself comes from a sugar.
Yes, he comes, yes. And basically, we have two kind of industry: cooperative, owned by the farmers, but I think this own should be inverted now, because majority of the politicians they run these factories, and western part of the country and some southern states, and North India is mostly dominated by the private industry. And at the same time, the cultivation of cane is also have different kind of nature. North coast and cultivation process is different, south is different, yields are different, sugar recovery is also different in different parts. So there cannot be a single formula for the entire country. UP is the
that is why you have a state administered price, isn't it?
That is why, because if we go with the opinion of sugar mills, that center used to announce a statutory minimum price, which was replaced by fair and remunerative price. But at that time, when millers paid more than 200 or 250, 260 to the farmer 2 years back, and FMP was less than 150. So how can you say it is remunerative? So actually it's a distorted fact.
No, but why should the state get into the business at all, really, of trying to price the cane, trying to tell the millers that you must procure your sugar cane only from within a certain area? There's a distance limitation between one mill and another. Why should the government get into this at all? Why not leave it to the market?
Actually, yes, government I think little bit left to the market, and if you go back, when to have a license for sugar industry was a very big task.
Absolutely.
So, and it was so much regulated industry. Gradually government is losing the control, but not a full control. And the nature is also different for compared to other industry, because industry needs a regular supply of cane for 6 months. That's why you need a continuous process of supply, and there should be an agreement between the farmer and the mill. Mill has to pay to the farmer, and farmer has to supply the cane to the mill.
Sure.
But and mill requires minimum quantity of cane. If you will allow a free for all thing, anybody can buy cane from anywhere. So it will be difficult for any industry to invest or any group to invest in a sugar mill, because there will not assure supply for a certain period of time. So that is a different kind of nature. So you need a relation between the mill and the farmer, and sugar is the only contract farming. I think the example of contract farming in this country since almost now almost near 100 years in the operation, which is functioning properly. Otherwise, other contract farming experiments have failed, in particularly in case of vegetable or fruits or food grain. But it is happening there. But I think industry, particularly this private industry, is also a little bit greedy at some time. When they make profit, they never said that we are going to share this profit with the farmer. But if there is a crisis, if they are in the, I think they lose money, so immediately they say that we will not accept this cane price fixed by the state.
So isn't it partly the problem, because the government is interfering like this? If we left it to the market, then whenever there is a a surplus production year, yes, prices will fall, and subsequently next year the farmers will perhaps grow a little less and they'll get a higher price. I mean, this is part of the nature of agricultural production. These are the market signals. So if the government were to deregulate completely, allow pricing of inputs. Today what the problem is that you are subsidizing fertilizer, you are subsidizing power, water. So you are growing areas in parts of Maharashtra, for instance, where you should not be really growing sugarcane.
Yes.
It's a water intensive crops. So you have distorted input signals and you have distorted output signals. So why not do away with these distortions on both sides and have kind of lead free animal spirits? Because if you remember, the Rangarajan committee had gone into sugar pricing, and they had said clearly the pricing is a more political process and an economic process. So pricing should be an economic decision. decision.
You are right that pricing should be economic decision, but not only the sugarcane prices should be economic decision. Sugar price should also be economic decision.
Absolutely.
We have a tremendous control on sugar prices.
Okay.
Few months back, millers were allowed to sell such quantity in the first half of the month, this quantity in the second half of the month. If you will not sell, it will become the levy sugar.
Basically, we have too many regulations.
Too many regulations.
Okay, on that note, Harvir, I just will have to interrupt you because we're going to slip into a very short break. It's been a very interesting discussion, but we'll have to take a break at this point of time. But please do stay with us. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. In the world of international trade and finance, there is no disputing the US dollar's pole position. The dollar's position as the international reserve currency gives the US currency and in turn the US economy much greater clout than the country's macroeconomic fundamentals would warrant. Now it seems that unique position just might be threatened. The week saw the use of the yuan overtake the euro and the yen in trade finance. To the extent that trade flows are only a fraction of the overall capital flows, this is only a very small dent in the dollar's fortress, but it might be the harbinger of the future. Let's see what Harvir has to say on this, but first, let's hear this bureau report.
The Chinese economic miracle is finally reflecting in the global currency market. Long dominated by the US dollar, the renminbi, better known as the yuan, is asserting itself. According to the financial services firm SWIFT, importers and exporters used renminbi for 8.7% of their financing agreements with trade partners in October, up from 4.4% a year earlier. That made the yuan the second most used currency in trade finance, although it's still behind the mighty US dollar that backs 81% of trade finance. Trade finance includes letters of credit. Globally, letters of credits are only a small fraction of the $5.3 trillion a day foreign exchange market, but the rapid adoption of the yuan is part of China's efforts to boost its currency on the international stage. In September, the Bank for International Settlements reported that the yuan became one of the top 10 most trade currencies for the first time, moving to the 9th place from 17th in 2010. Daily trading tripled to $120 billion in the same period. Chinese currency trades within a narrow band dictated by the Chinese government, although Beijing has allowed it to widen in recent years. China has taken steps to make it easier to convert in and out of yuan to compete with the US dollar that dominates global trade flows. The move was also aimed at challenging the dominance of other major global currencies such as euro, British pound and Japanese yen. The Chinese government has also announced its decision to move faster towards capital account convertibility. China is the world's second largest economy. Last year, it surpassed the US to become the world's biggest trading nation. Although yuan is playing a bigger role in the credit instruments, not much of the currency is actually changing hands outside China. According to SWIFT, Chinese currency is still being used to pay for just 0.8% of all global transactions, lagging behind currencies of much smaller economies, including the Thai baht and Swedish krona. Yuan's growing use is still a regional phenomenon as most of the trade finance in China takes place with Hong Kong and Singapore. Though the yuan may be a long way from displacing the dollar, the gradual rise in yuan's usage globally is significant. Chinese leaders are making concerted efforts to promote yuan. On 2nd December, China's central bank unveiled a blueprint to make it easier for business and individuals in Shanghai's free trade zone to invest abroad. It is also aimed at increasing flows of yuan into and out of China. Last year, China's central bank said foreign investors could save 2% to 3% on their invoices if they pay in yuan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Harvir, for a long time, the rest of the world has been waiting to kind of see that the US position is somewhat weakened. I'm not sure the rest of the world is happy to see the rise of the yuan, but clearly competition for the dollar is good news. How do you view this development?
I think it is good, and it is good for a country like India. We have very good trade relation, and our share of trade is very big with China. And if you see that this yuan replaced euro in terms of this credit facilities and or particularly for trade. Many countries are directly doing this, and surprisingly even Germany also a very important share in this, and Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, all these countries are and even now Britain is also going to do direct exchange between yuan and pound. So I think this is the more and more clout of the Chinese economy we are feeling in the global economic scenario.
But the first requirement of any international reserve currency is that the country must run a trade deficit, which the US has been doing. But China has a trade surplus with almost virtually all countries in the world. So how will China will it be willing to shift from a surplus to a deficit? What does it mean? Because China has kept the yuan deliberately undervalued in order to promote its exports. So this entails huge obligations also on the Chinese leadership. So will China be prepared to go the whole hog? And will the rest of the world also view China, with less alarm? Because all said and done, most governments are a little wary of China's growing economic clout.
You see that if you go in the recent development from the Chinese side on policy front, they are more and more obliging their economy. Although this trade in this currency trade in yuan is really very low of the overall this
because
thing,
it's not a convertible currency.
It's not convertible currency, but now they are saying that we are allowing it the exchange rate of the market driven exchange rate. Earlier it was completely controlled exchange rate
yes,
of administered rate for yuan, and they are also seeing that if you have to increase your economic activities, and China is, I think, investing a lot in different countries. Even in our country, though, they are extending the credit facilities to the companies who are importing Chinese equipment in power and telecom and all. So they also have learned that it is not easy to grow continuously with so many controls. That's why we are feeling this change, and I think in the coming future there will be more and more liberal regime we will feel on the financial front from China.
Okay, so you kind of feel it's a hopeful sign, but I think most countries in the world would wonder if you get into this kind of situation where you're dependent on China to provide the enough supply of liquidity in the globe. What does it mean? Because clearly today Ben Bernanke has immense clout because the US is able to just print dollars and flood the system with liquidity. Now I'm not so sure, and I don't know whether you also would look at a world which is hostage to US interests. Would you view it with as much alarm or less alarm as a world which is hostage to Chinese interests? Will the world be prepared to allow that?
No, I think due to this political nature of China, and they are basically they are not too open. Transparency is very low on political decision making, as well as on the diplomatic front also. Sometimes they are very rigid. So nobody can compare China and US. So I think it is not easy that this yuan will replace dollar.
It's a long way to come.
It's a long way, very long
and
way.
you also talked about China investing in many countries. I think one of the differences between FDI from the US and FDI from China is that in the case of FDI from US companies, these are purely privately owned companies, whereas Chinese companies, almost all of them are basically state-owned, and even if they are not officially state-owned, there is a state backing. So many countries are very wary of allowing Chinese investments on a large scale. Is this fear of Chinese investment, because we've seen that even in the case of India, whenever we talk about sourcing from Chinese telecom companies, there are a great deal of security concerns that are invariably raised. Are these concerns a little overdone, or is there some kind of really need? Is there a case really to be a little wary of Chinese investment in terms of, does it really mean the Chinese state entering that country, security concerns, etc.? Are these overdone, or are they warranted?
I think a country like India should not fear for all these things. But the way Chinese are entering in a different part of the world, like African countries and some Latin American countries, and even they are investing a lot in European countries also. So on this, security issues are always there.
So security issues are
because it's a really very iron curtain country, and there is transparency is not
so
really
though it is
much.
good news, one needs to watch out with a little bit of care and caution. So on that note, we come to the end of this program. Thank you so much, Harvir, for being with us. But before we close, a quick look at the key takeaways. As far as the Bali Ministerial is concerned, Harvir feels that we should not agree to the peace clause because Indian farmers might end up getting a very raw deal. As far as the sugar impasse is concerned, there is a case, overwhelming case really, for doing away with all kinds of controls and allowing the agricultural sector to take part as much in liberalization as industry. On the Chinese yuan, yes, it's good news to have competition for the dollar, but when it comes to China, we must always be just a little cautious. And with that, we come to the end of this program. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you from all of us in RSTV.